So while we can't do that, no judgment. Hear what Ken has to say without any judgment, any hindrance. No, this is what I'd like to do. Then we can go from there. It's a starting point. But if you interrupt us, so we could never do that, is that you are hindering the energy of the person. Stop the toxicity. Stop that kind of environment where we're not open. I said, Mom, what would you like to do? Dad, what do you want to do? Dad, what are your fears about this transition? Well, I'm not sure, Ken, if you're ready to take it over. What is it
What
that
if you
I'm
screw
doing?
it up, man, and lose it all?
Well, there's that too. How do I account for that? How do I plan for that? How do I take that in consideration? How could I have a successful transition that is, it's called succession planning for a reason, not succession. Hello, here, it's yours now, or I'm gone, or I'm not unhealthy, or somebody has some kind of health event that they can't do it, which occurred to one of my friends.
If you don't have the values alignment, if you're not happy, what are you going to do to discover what you need and what you value and how the other people around you are wired?
I'm going to give you a list of 4 or 5 things of action items to do as part of it. Go to Keis, KenKeis.com/family. You're going to be able to download the Quest for Purpose book, ebook for free. You would never do this in any other part of your life. If there's something wrong with your animal, you get the vet out. Why did this company who has $50 million of business hire me to come in? Because they couldn't do it on themselves.
Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hello, friends and farmers and everyone else who's been given this podcast. You need to listen to this one. It's Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, welcoming you to an episode that I think many of you are going to resonate with because it's around the theme of helping the next chapter transition the family farm with clarity. And what I really wanted to call it is how to let Dad let go. And I've got Dr. Ken Keis with me. He's a good friend that we've known each other for quite a few years. And I've done training with him under his company, CRG Consulting Group. And Ken, welcome to the podcast. I think this is your second time around on a whole different topic.
It's the second time. It must have been good the first time, Elaine. It's always good to hang out with you, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate that because mostly what I appreciate is you have a really good toolbox, which is important and practical to farm families. And the other thing I appreciate about you is you totally understand agriculture because you grew up on a dairy farm. So just so listeners can get to know you quickly, what do you want them to know about you now and where you came from?
Oh, where I came from. Well, I did grow up on a dairy farm. I'm the eldest male, 3rd generation, Eastern European descent. So when I left the farm, I was called a trader, of course. I had my own dairy farm for a little while. I worked in agriculture with the Department of Agriculture, also a division of Cargill as a feed sales rep and nutritionist for dairy cattle. And then I started my own sales training company way back in 1989, and then progressed to the point where I own Consulting Resource Group, was founded in 1979. We are a leadership development and clarity expertise is for helping people to realize their full potential. And now I've been in this space 37 years, you can believe it. And I mean, a lot of my clients have been agriculture. I was a keynote speaker at the Saskatchewan Dairy Farmers Annual Meeting, or the BCAI Center, and doing sales training for them, or, companies like Boeing or Manulife I've served as well in Singapore, Australia, just been at Mexico City with Chrysler. So been around the world to do it. So that's my background now. And growing up, my English teacher said I wouldn't amount to anything because I was dyslexic. Yeah, because I was dyslexic. And back then they didn't have these sort of tools. But here I am now, author of these 14 tools that you talk about. And as a company, our dedication is really to help people to realize their full potential. And we'll get into the details today in the session. But it was really, when you think about life is all about measurements. Life's all about being clear. If you're on a dairy farm, you do BCAs with your cows. You want to know what the production is. You want to know what your solids, not fats are. When you're doing your soil, what's the NPK? What's all the micronutrients? When you're harvesting like you do, Elaine, what's the bushels per acre? I mean, we
Right.
measure everything, but what about us? What about ourselves as human beings? So as a company, that's our dedication, is to help you to get clear about your measurement. What is it that really motivates you? Where do you want to go? Who are you? And that's why we've created this whole tool set that you now are certified on many years ago. And it's almost 20 years, Elaine, that we
That's a
certified
good,
now. We were
yes.
hanging out at the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. That's where we got to know each other. And then it progressed to this. And here
Mhm.
we are. We're privileged to be able to serve others and help others. And I love the agricultural field and help people to get to the next level. And I guess my challenge for today, for those of you that are listening, is that act on the information that we're going to talk about. If you listen to this episode and do nothing, it's still going to do nothing. And that's my
Mhm.
encouragement. Whatever show that you listen to from Elaine, she's going to have experts on it, is that you take action on whatever is being presented to you. Because if you don't, then we're just going to be stuck in the same place.
Well, and many people have heard me say this many times. Procrastination is killing agriculture. Ken and you and I both have family of origin stories that haven't always gone the way that we had hoped, but we'll tell quite a few stories today, and they'll be good ones. And the first story I want to tell is my own family. Back in 2012, when my son was dating, brought his girlfriend home, and it was Easter, and she went straight to the sink to clean up dishes. And my other girlfriend sitting at the table said, "Oh, she's a keeper," because she was, had a servant heart and was willing to go and do dishes. Anyway, they started dating, and it came around to being summertime, and Ian was, really looking at coming back to the farm and what that might look like. And so I used your personal style indicator on all four of us, and they weren't engaged. She was the girlfriend, but we did sit down, Ken, and have a bit of a family meeting, vision meeting about, what the opportunities were on at Boys Vein Select Seeds. And it was very helpful because I already knew that I was influential, because that's my style that I discovered with your toolbox when I was doing the training with you to get certified. My husband is called ambitious determined, so he's very task oriented. My son is responsive balanced, so he's a real people guy, which is why seed sales have done fabulously well since he's been invoking relationship marketing since he's been back on the farm, since he graduated from ag school. And my daughter-in-law was trained as a nurse, top of her class, and she's really high for cognitive detail, which I am not, that's my lowest score. So when you talk about data, after we did this exercise on the couch in August, wouldn't you know, I'm in an airport coming home through Calgary after speaking somewhere, and I can remember exactly, I was sitting in Chili's restaurant. He said, Mom, I've got news. I said, what's happening? He said, we're engaged. And I was just so happy that they had made that decision. But you're talking about potential, Ken, and you're talking about clarity. And Brene Brown in her podcast says, being clear is kind. So as we're recording this, we're 50% done seeding. I just talked to a dear friend, Jeremy Allen, out in Alberta, who's just lost a dear friend to a farm accident, age 44.
Mm.
We've got high gas prices, high diesel prices. We've got people not wanting, like, don't know yet if they could even plant because of the flood or the snow or whatever. And so farms, as you know, and farm families have to navigate a lot of risk and figure out tools to do that. So tell me what's in your toolbox that you think would be most helpful to the listeners to figure out how people are wired. The book behind you on your bookshelf is one of my favorites, called Why Aren't You More Like Me? So can you explain to the
Well,
farmers listening, why aren't their dads more like
well,
them?
of course. Well, let me do two sort of tracks with you. All of
Okay.
us are we nature or we nurture. So we develop through our culture. If I grew up in a dairy farm, or if I grew up in Afghanistan, if I grew up in
Yes.
LA, if I grew up in Manitoba, I'm going to have sort of a different ecosystem that's going to shape sort of my perspective as well as my family of origin. So what you're talking about is that all of us have a personality we call personal style. That personal
Uh-huh.
style is anchored at birth. So anybody listening, if you have 2 or 3 or 4 children, are they exactly the same? Most of them will be
No.
different, same parents, same environment, but what's causing that difference? That difference is this biological nature. So everybody has this personal style. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. And sometimes those personal styles can rub against each other. In other words, what your strength is what irritates me. So your daughter-in-law has this cognitive or detailed orientation. If she gets into this where she wants to tell everybody else that they're wrong, then that actually can break relationships. Or your son, if he's all relationship oriented and he gets distracted with conversations and he's an hour late for the combine because he was talking
How
to his
did you know?
buddy having a beer, so or whatever he's having, a Coke, then
Mm-hmm.
then all of these come into play. So it isn't right, it isn't wrong, but every style has its related strengths and related challenges. And so a lot of times there's conflict. It doesn't matter if it's family farms. I mean, I was just doing some work with a large retail organization, multi-million-dollar operation, and one of the managers there was not getting along with the other managers. So it's just people. So we have all
Right.
these different dynamics. So the key is, first of all, we need to recognize that we have these differences. These differences need to be appreciated. We need to understand our own strengths. And then we also need to understand that every strength has related weaknesses. So if your husband is task driven, then sometimes I can forget about the emotional toll if I'm just drive, drive, drive. If I'm just emotional and I'm not task driven, then I'm not getting things done. I could be interpersonal where I stuff conflict. So there are many family farms. And in fact, ours went through this too, where my dad took 10 years to transfer the farm. I mean, 10 years. Yeah, I'm selling it to you, but it took 10 years to be able to get the paperwork. Well, my mother, and of course, she'll never listen to this, is that she's interpersonal. So whenever there were stressful conversations or difficult conversations, she would avoid them. And then, of course, she would internalize that and be stressed by it and be upset and worried. So the reality is avoiding difficult decisions never fixes anything. That's what you have been talking about in your coaching business for a couple of decades,
Decades.
is that avoidance is a action item which is not healthy. It just isn't. So we have that side, but I want to mention this other side. And that is where we talk about purpose. So I grew up on the dairy farm. I left the farm because really the culture and the nature of it is, the way that my dad wanted to manage and the way that I wanted to manage it was not one that was healthy communications. I still
It
love my
wasn't
dad.
collaborative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I still love my dad. He's still alive as we do this show at 92. But I actually went out and I started my own dairy farm. And then I got up one morning and I said, if I'm here 20 years from now, would this be okay? And I said, absolutely not. So part of the question, the other side is purpose, and we're going to have a free gift about that purpose
Mm.
direction. If we're going to have clarity, I need to understand who I am, but I also need to understand my gifts, talents, and abilities. There's a lot of research around family businesses. I used to work in the auto industry as a consultant too. A lot of
Yeah.
family-owned businesses there in the car business, as I would say. A lot of times people have sort of inherited positions or roles on the farm because they're part of the family. It's not necessarily a fit. So, personal example, my brother is a gifted mechanic. And so he worked on the farm for nearly 20 years, but he hated every moment of it. So he's not an animal guy. We have a large dairy farm, but he would take a tractor and at 21 split it and replace the transmission and put it back together, but never been to any training. So he left the farm and now he's the senior mechanic for a trucking company with 20 trucks. And so he's gifted
And
in
he's
that area
happy.
and he gets up
And
early
he's
in the
happy.
morning. He's there back late. So, but he used to be late for chores because he wasn't motivated, but it took him 20 years to have the
To figure it out.
courage to get
Mm-hmm.
out. Now, yes, it left a gap. Oh, you should be here. A lot of times there's this in society, there's a lot of obligation. And
Or you should.
you should. And you're shitting on people and you just need to
Say
stop
that
that. Yeah,
faster there, my
that's right.
friend.
Yeah, that's right. I won't. Now, I'm not discounting. It's interesting because I know that this is true for my father and it's true for many of you listening, is that the farm or your business is your identity. And I'm here to say
Mm.
that is not true. It is
And
just an
please
entity.
stop
And
that.
and I know
Yeah.
because we are 5 generations on the farm now, is that the identity of the farm is so important to my dad that my brother would take it over. And now his son who is nearly 40 is there. And then he has a son. And so maybe it'll be 6 generations pretty quick, is that the legacy of the farm was the family. I'm here to say you
Mm.
that the relationship and the people is the legacy. And the other question that people have to ask if you want clarity is, what is your purpose? So purpose, meaning my interests, gifts, and talents, is a separate measure from personality. Personality, so you could have I could have the same personality as a law enforcement officer or as a fireman or fire
Fighter.
person or a speaker like yourself or a coach like you and I. But so that's one thing. But what I want to do, I love speaking, you love training, this development industry, 37 years for myself. I still love it as much today as I did when I first started. In fact, actually more because I'm more competent, I'm more capable to do it. But a lot of times people never ask these questions. People are just busy in the farm, just being busy and going. So recently I had a coaching contract with a large farm. I'm talking 50 million plus business with 80 staff members, but there are 4 primary family members on this farm. And it is basically a disaster where they don't know what they don't know. So, I quote the self-awareness book, Insights by Dr. Tasha. And they said, what percentage of people say that they really know themselves and how they come across is equal to how other people experience them? And 95% of people say that my perception of self is equal to my group around me. But that's only true 10% of the time. So in this consulting contract or coaching contract was pretty intense because I really had to call out the family members that
Tell the truth?
they weren't doing a very good job. And so they had basically got some venture capital involved with the business. They had doubled the size of it and they had outgrown their capabilities and they really didn't know what they didn't know. So there was this huge gap. Now, it's not
Gap.
putting them down. They're very nice people, but they were not prepared for this growth. In other words,
And not aware.
not
And not
aware.
aware.
And so, that's part of the job that we work with is there's a lack of clarity because people have not been doing the work. So when Richard Bowles wrote the book, What Color's Your Parachute, which was a New York Times seller for many years, and I had lunch with him, he's passed away now. So, why are there so many people confused, even outside of the farm? In the career field where 80% of people don't like their job, is that because they haven't been willing to do the work? And so if you think about the farm environment, now I've met some very progressive farmers and people who are in agriculture who do, the planning. They have the meetings. They formalize these businesses to treat it like a business. And I'm not to take away from the family elements, but if you're not going in and leaning into, what are my strengths? What do I really like doing? Is there a role of responsibility at this operation that really fits me? And if there isn't, then where do I fit? And sometimes the biggest favor we could do to ourselves is move into a different role and leave the farm like my brother did. So my brother is very happily doing that business. They love him. They don't want him to retire because he's getting close to retirement.
Yeah.
He says,
And plus, look at the work ethic he has. Side note.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal where he was on his own, trying to maintain all these highway trucks, 13 or 14 on his own. Sometimes he'd leave at 6 a.m, get back at 8 p.m, 6 days a week. So, so where did he get that dedication from? He never was that way on the farm. So sometimes we need to look at these clues. You talk about procrastination. Procrastination, sometimes the clue is that I'm doing the wrong thing or I'm doing the right thing in the wrong environment. So for me, I probably would have stayed on the farm if the culture wasn't toxic, if the culture was developmental. So you said, you started at the very beginning of the show, what do we do to get farm owners to let go? And so you have to ask yourself this question. Okay, you're the farm owner, you're in the 60s. Both of us, Elaine, are in our 60s. So we're
shortly not the case anymore.
Okay, well, you don't have to admit that on air. Okay.
It's okay. I'm all about being clear about how old you are.
Okay.
I'm turning 70 on October 27th.
Well,
congratulations.
Congratulations. I'm not there quite yet, but I'm soon behind you. So is that if nothing changed in 5 or 10 years, like what's the plan for the transition? So I was actually trained under Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. And so he's got the New York Times bestselling book, Triggers. He was the #1 executive coach in the world. And he worked with the top CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies. And he would help them transition and retire. And he said it was the most devastating and difficult thing for these CEOs that are running multi-billion-dollar companies. Their transition to retirement for many of them was a disaster So
Mhm.
these are very intelligent individuals. So I'm giving you this story for those of you listening that it's not just unique to you. Everybody has this transition. You and I have this transition that we have to talk about in our life. How do we manage our businesses and other people to be involved with it? So here are these CEOs of these multi-billion-dollar companies, something like the World Bank or Vision or whatever it was,
Mhm.
and they're now struggling. What am I going to do next? Because they hadn't thought about it. They haven't considered it. They were so busy being busy. They're so busy being involved in that. That was their identity. And I have another friend who actually I coached him. He was a medical doctor. He was miserable. He didn't want to quit because he had done all this training to be an MD. And finally, I said, well, listen, be an MD until you figure out what you want to do. Now he's a coach to doctors. And
Well, see, because he's still in the medical field and he's using all that expertise.
right. And guess what his
So
newsletter was yesterday is why doctors are fearful of retiring.
and
It's
so he's sort of preaching to the choir now because he's really
He
lived
has the
it.
credibility as an MD who was miserable,
Mhm.
who then really identifies with them, and now he's helping his own community. So, as
Right.
a farmer and farm family, you have to ask the question, what do people want to do? If you don't meet and talk about it, you and I both know, I don't know what the last stat is, what percentage of people don't have wills in place, don't have estate planning in place. I mean, now with the governments and taxes, just that alone is a disaster waiting to happen. We've been around family farms who didn't have things in order.
Mhm.
And one of my dairy farm friends, the father passed away suddenly. Now, he was still in his 70s, but it was suddenly. And all of a sudden, they had to sell the farm to pay out the sisters. And now he's a herdsman instead of owning his own farm because there wasn't a plan of that transition. So, a lot of times, that delay or the lack of a plan is actually going to set the farm up to be gone when you're gone.
So these are all hard stories and not healing stories, Ken. And so when you talk about clarity and culture, to us we have the saying culture beats strategy, which is what you believe to be true, how you behave, and how you make decisions. So I have a husband who's 5 months younger than I am, and it's an interesting thing to know that your capacity to do things is changing. But I heard a doctor once tell a farmer, "Well, you just need to get a hobby and you need to go golfing," right? Well, no. Most farmers that I coach do not want to be pushed or shoved off the farm. So anyone listening to this as a younger farmer, please be clear that you still want to use the respect and wisdom and lived experience of the older generation, but you do want to have collaborative, I think, decision making. And also, you want to have a place to have equity, because your friend who ended up being the herdsman, he didn't get equity in the farm because nothing transitioned with a warm hand instead of a cold one, which I have a very strong bias about, which people will know.
Hmm.
Because when you can do your tax planning and your wealth cascading plan and the farm financial liquidity, whatever you want to call it, and continuity planning, whatever you want to call it, it's better when you do it while you're all alive, in my humble opinion.
100%.
So
100%.
my curiosity, Ken, with the toolbox that you have, how how do you help a farmer who is in their late 60s, really tired by 8 o'clock, falling asleep watching the Blue Jays, goes to the doctor and the doctor says, "Your blood is fine. I'm not going to give you any hormones. And you've got horrible sleep habits." But the reason the horrible sleep habits are there is because his dad is watching the price of diesel go up, fertilizer go up, and wondering if the crop's going to get planted on time, and all the things that farmers
Mm,
have to navigate with risk. The other thing is we are human beings, not human doings. What we do is not our identity. That's what you and I would align with. But
right.
many people say, if I'm no longer the main manager and the main owner of this farm, who am I?
Mm. And that's the big question, isn't it? So when you
Mm-hmm.
say about tools, so we've already mentioned two of them, which was the personality, which is understanding your strengths and the weaknesses. And also that's the collaborative nature and who should do what and where. Then the purpose book, which we're actually going to give you as a free gift at the end of the show if you listen
Thank you
to
to our
the
listeners. We'll give them the
it's an
link.
e version of that book, so you can go on this journey of clarity. I do believe that we have certain themes in our life that we want to keep going. So
Okay.
only you or the person that's listening can decide what is fulfilling for them. So another tool, which is a sister tool to the personal style indicator, it's chapter 8 of the book, Why Aren't You More Like Me, is the values assessment. And
And you know
I
what? That's one of the best ones. I'm just going to interrupt you because I was at a family meeting in the middle of seating earlier this week, Ken. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I drove an hour and a half to get there for 8 o'clock. We met between 8 and 10. And you said, in the middle of seating, Elaine? Yes. And the daughter-in-law said, Elaine, we need to talk about our values. And I go, dead on, absolutely. So the family sat there and listed out things like family harmony, profitability, happiness, and your value styles indicator, which I also did years ago. I mean, I can rhyme off my top 5 values like a telephone number
right.
because that clarity, I need challenge, which means I cannot work for the government. I have to be an entrepreneur. I need independence, which means also a speaker and entrepreneur. I also need intimacy and relationship, which is my highest value, right? To love and be loved. And I need honesty. So I'm a truth teller. I'm not going to beat around the bush. And I also have spirituality because my faith is core to why I serve and do what I do. So there you go, man. I learned that with your tool online. So tell us more about why values are important for
Well,
getting
one way to
clarity.
think about it is that you were just talking about the complexity of life and all the different challenges that are coming our way, is that we have all these situations, and you're destined for
Circumstances.
failure if you're making situational decisions instead of
Mm,
values-based decisions. So
mm,
our values, so we have two different values tools. One is the personal values, where I understand my internal motivations. And linked to those are needs and fears. So if, let's say, my value is independence, well, then I know I need to really control my own space. I can't really work for other individuals. That's one of my top values. And to be controlled by somebody else or told what to do. All my jobs had independence. As a sales rep, I was independent. As a federal inspector, I was independent. So I had this independence theme until I really understood it. So for people to make, what the families can do is they understand what are the core values of everybody here. And then as you go forward and start making decisions, you want to filter those decisions through that values portal. So if it is something like intimacy, or if it is something like creativity, or example is, I had a client and they had a 400% turnover. So this is in the retail space. It was a
Ooh,
credit
that's
collection
expensive.
department place. And he had hired people with the value of tranquility. Well,
Oh, no.
their number one fear is conflict. And I said, why are you hiring people with tranquility as a value? He says, well, because our reputation as a credit collection department is very poor. I want nice people. And so, but every
Oh, but what
call,
about nice people who can
yeah,
be sitting in the fire,
but
man?
here's what happens is that people that are listening, some of you are feeling despondent, you're feeling down, maybe even depressed. But and part of that, what contributes to that, if you're not aligned, if you're not
Yeah, I
aligned,
like
yeah,
this.
if you're not aligned to what your core values are and not living them out, there's a
You're not
disconnect.
happy.
You are not congruent. And your engagement in what you're doing is not sustainable, such as my brother moving on to, being the
Your
mechanic for this
trucking
trucking
company.
versus, dealing
Mhm.
with the cattle and feeding them. And yes, he was doing the field work, but that was really not his space. Plus the culture of where he was working, how he's operating as well. So first of all, you get clear about what are those core values. And then I'm actually doing a retreat for $1 billion company in a couple of weeks right after this, because they're going through
Okay.
that same thing. They acquired 3 or 4 different companies. So that's the personal values. The other values, which you were talking about your family, are the team or the corporate or the business or the family values. So the values that by which we want to operate. And I'm doing both of
Yeah.
this for this company at this retreat, because they have all these senior executives that are coming in, and they had all these different companies that they had hired. And here's what the stats show is that if the
Wow.
values are aligned to who I am, I'm 51 times more likely to be engaged. If I have a toxic workplace, I'm 10 times more likely to quit. And so you have some family members who are leaving because, and when I say toxic, it's not supportive, it's not collaborative. It's maybe nobody's being,
My way or the highway, baby.
oh, that could be that way, or I'll call it the sin of omission. We just simply
Mhm.
don't talk about the important things.
Oh,
We
we
just
can't.
keep
We
putting that
can't.
off.
No.
I've told you
Yeah.
about my own family story, about having any kind of conversation about this is totally thwarted. And so that's
Mhm.
not healthy. This is unhealthy conversations. Now, the other thing that you were talking about, we have another assessment on wellness. And
Okay.
the stress indicator health planner, we talked about that even personally at one time, Elaine, where if I
Yeah.
am not healthy, in other words, I don't have my energy, then fatigue makes cowards of us all. Fatigue then drains us in terms of our engagement, our enthusiasm, all these words that we can use around it. So now all of a sudden, and all our tools work together to get as a system. We have another tool that is not used as frequently but very powerful, called the self-worth or competence indicator. So if what do I think about myself? How do I feel about myself? So sometimes people are making decisions based out of fear or lack of confidence, or they're not making the decision. So people who actually have low self-worth have higher immunity disorders, and so they're sick more often.
Yeah.
Their inability to make decisions that are difficult and hard are reduced. So, and we have this in the agricultural environment. It is what it is. I can't change what the fuel price is right now. So what am I going to do
No.
about it? How am I going to handle that? Am I going to have some kind of efficiency thing that I can come in? Is there a different size piece of equipment or operation, or a different way that I can run the equipment to be able to
Or am
save
I
some
going to
fuel?
watch my numbers closely?
Yeah. Am
And
I going to watch it?
I'm going to
What's the
really,
input?
really be conscious about things I do need, or maybe things I want but don't maybe need so badly right now.
Right. So need and want and those different.
Mhm.
So here's what goes back to Dick's comment. Are you willing to do the work? So are we just
Mm.
busy milking the cows, planting the crops, uh, calving out the cows, if I've got a cow calf operation,
Yeah.
or farrowing the pigs, is that what I'm doing? Or am I actually leaning into, who am I? Where am I going? And here's the other one. You mentioned this in an email to me, Elaine. Not all partners are on the same page.
Yeah.
So, my daughter's husband,
Like spouse part, like
yeah,
I'm thinking
yeah,
husband and wife, and that's the trend I'm seeing more too, is people having real non-alignment as a couple and head of the business.
right. And so,
I'll just make a comment to the listeners who might be hearing some sawing in the background. I have a 1960s built farmhouse, and so there's a bunch of drywall being cut while we speak.
oh
So
wow,
it's a bit of an
beautiful, beautiful. So we're
emergency
we're we're an
water
active, we're
situation.
we're a working site. So that's
Okay.
happening right there. So yeah, that's what's in the background. So part of this is what will work for both parties. So if the one party really wants to retire and they don't want to have that full job anymore, then what does that mean for me, who I want to stay? So we have to have this conversation where there might be a middle ground. Or example, with my wife, she quit her job and then moved into a different job, which didn't require a lot of. She was an academic coach at university working with athletes. Now she just drives school bus for a childcare system, so that she just drives for an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon, does her tennis, meets with and takes care of her mom, meets with her girlfriends. And so that lifestyle is working for her now.
The life she's always wanted at this stage of her life,
Right. And
Ken.
so life is transitioning. Like for me, I used to work 60 hours a week in this business. I'm probably 35 now, but I'll still do things late at night. I'm kind of the entrepreneur that really is, I work when my energy is there. After this
Mhm.
podcast, I'm going to go to the tennis bubble and play tennis with my friends. So, but I can do that at this stage of my career and what I'm doing. So I'm challenging the people that are listening is you get to decide what you want to do. Now, here's the other thing. You mentioned two things is it's way better to do it while you're alive, but it's also way better
Yes.
to do it while you're healthy. So
Yes.
I've seen this happen where people don't retire in time and they get to the point
To
where their
enjoy the
health is
fruit
in
of
a
their
point
hand.
and a level where they can't travel. They can't do some of
Mhm.
these other things that they're doing. It could be that, okay, I'm on the farm during the summer. But in the winter, I am down in Florida or I'm down in Arizona and I take 2 or 3 months away, or maybe I don't want to do that, where my CEO friend was out of a credit union was doing that. And well, I hear an alarm somewhere.
No, that's my phone. I'm ignoring it.
You're ignoring. Okay. I thought I was late for some appointment.
Yeah, sorry.
So the CEO of
This
this
is the,
credit
the
union,
podcast with lots of spurious
okay, but
background
there we go.
noise.
My CEO with this credit union, he and his wife have been on 60 cruises, just because that is what they wanted to do after retired. And then with the grandchildren, his son has a business out here. He's from Saskatchewan. His son has a business out here on the West Coast where I'm in Vancouver. And so then he comes, helps him for 2 months a year, with some of the books and the running of the business. And then he does
Yeah.
his cruises. Then he goes his grandchildren, which are in Manitoba. And so that's all that area there. So he set up something that's working for him.
So that's important to understand, that you have the ability to make choices, Ken. And what we've talked about today is it's not just about your personal style, right? Indication.
One of the other things I wanted to mention too, and this is that, people have a certain amount of pride. So
Yes.
in this retail business that I just, in the middle
Spoke
of this
about.
coaching contract with my friend, is he had promoted somebody into a level of incompetence. So, and she was disrupting all these other managers, creating a toxic environment, which never was toxic before. And so she was a person who was kind of lower to mid level. And because two senior people had quit, she got promoted into this space because everybody else was assigned their positions in this retail environment. And basically, after my coaching, I said, listen, she can't stay. She can't stay in that role if you want to keep this team together. And a lot of these people were there for 15 years, 20 years in his
Mm,
business. So he did demote her, or the option is that she got to quit. And so this is not something that's uncommon, even from the farm point of view. What is going to work best for you? And so if everything is about the survival of the farm, what happens to the survival of the soul of the person? And so
yes.
you use all these tools. So my personality, my values, my self-worth, my wellness level. And then I mentioned we also have a team values sort where we go through and say, what are the team values? Is it respect? Is it honesty? Are all these things that come, and this is how we're going to treat each other? And do we track what we do or don't do? Because we want to avoid the behaviors that undermine it. And then we have these, and then it's purpose, of course, too. And then we go through this whole process and say, okay, what is it? What is it that, not from a self-centered point of view, but from a self-honoring point of view, what is it that we can do? How can we work this out? And there's usually a middle ground somewhere, somehow, to be able to figure this out. If we're going to be collaborative and you want to stay on the farm and I don't, then what is an environment that will work? So our next door neighbor who has a dairy farm, they've been very successful in their transition. The eldest brother, who is my age, end up been given some money and he moved his farm to Manitoba. It's
Uh-huh.
from the Fraser Valley. And so they continued on. The father and mother got a offsite condominium, and then dad would come down at 8 o'clock and have coffee and says, what am I here to do today?
And
And so,
he changed his role. He changed his role, Ken, and that's the message I want listeners to hear today. Dad and mom, we are not pushing you off the farm, but we need to have transition of wealth and equity. We need a change in roles, and we need to know what is a good day look like to you on the farm.
right. And again, what happened with my own family is that one of the number one frustrations for you if you're operating the farm is responsibility without authority. So,
Yes.
okay, you put the son in charge, but I can't make any decisions.
Or he doesn't even see the finances. I had an international discovery call yesterday, Ken, where the son's been there for 10 years and still doesn't seen the books. And I said, this has to stop now.
Well, that was very similar to my place as well. So on the farm, there was no openness whatsoever. And then of course it was almost a situation where, fine, you can see them now. But it was with this resistance. It was this
Yeah.
sort of dogmatic, um, um, how do you want to call it?
Well, I just it again, not with grace and not and with a lot of pride and stubbornness. Now, pride can be a good thing when it helps you to work well and be integral in your work and be proud of what you've accomplished. But
Right,
pride is not a good thing when it stops you from making the decisions and having the conversations to make things right with your family or to reach out and be able to create solutions for the transition.
right.
So of all the things that we've talked about today, what what's in your heart of hearts, Ken? Because you've been doing this work for over 30 years, as I have, and you're
Hmm.
internationally recognized for the work you've done. You've got all kinds of um, accolades for the things that you accomplished, and you did get your PhD, so you're now Dr. Ken Keis. Before I
Yeah.
met
Can
you,
you believe that? Wow.
no, that's awesome. And you get to play tennis and stay fit, and I get to go gardening and deliver meals to the field today.
You
So we
better
have
get going.
different lifestyles, but again, to be happy and to be aligned with the life that you've chosen is, I think, my message for the listeners today is that if you don't have the values alignment, if you're not happy, what are you going to do to discover what you need and what you value and how the other people around you are wired? So how do people find you? And I, as a coach here at Farm Family Coach, we have access because we're certified to all of your tools. So I'll do it two ways. How do people find you first?
Well, I'll give you, first of all, I'm going to make sure they get the gift, and I'm going to give
Yep.
you a list of 4 or 5 things of action items to do as part of it. And
Okay.
so go to Kenkeis, KenKeis.com/family, and then you're going to be able to download the Quest for Purpose book, ebook for free. And this is really an outline. I went through this journey in 89 or 88 myself when I was trying to figure out my whole identity was tied up with the dairy farm. Well,
38 years ago.
what am I going to do now if I'm not doing this? I knew it wasn't the farm and I knew it was speaking, but I didn't know to who or what. So I hired a coach that I work with for 6 months. So my other recommendation, so they also can find us at crgleader.com, where all our tools and assessments and resources are there. My number one recommendation, if you can't have these conversations with your family on their own in a healthy way, then get a coach to help you, get somebody to assist. This large organization, $50 million, they hired me because even them at that level, they couldn't have the conversations. I had no emotional involvement there, and I could
Objective third
ask.
party.
Objective third party. That is foundational. I have a coach. You have a coach. So we have these people who assist us along the way. And then we have these resources and tools in addition to the purpose. What's my personality? What's my values? Each one of these building blocks add to a point of clarity. What's my wellness level? So if I'm unhealthy, if my energy's down on my self-worth, these tools then will contribute to your journey of really knowing yourself, getting clear. When Brendan Bouchard wrote the book, Habits of High Performers, the number one habit of high performers in the world was clarity. You knew that you knew that you knew. And the other thing from the family farm, not only do you need to know yourself, you need to know everybody else on the team.
And
Mom, what do you want to
what
do?
their vision is and what their sense of being clear is. Yeah.
So, and to be able to listen to everybody's clarity. So while we can't do that, no judgment. Hear what Ken has to say without any judgment, any hindrance. No, this is what I'd like to do. Then we can go from there. It's a starting point. But if you interrupt, so we could never do that, is that you are hindering the energy of the person. Stop the toxicity. Stop that kind of environment where we're not open. I said, Mom, what would you like to do? Dad, what do you want to do? Dad, what are your fears about this transition? Well, I'm not sure, Ken, if you're ready to take it over. What is it
What
that
if you
I'm
screw it
doing?
up, man, and
Well,
lose it all?
well, there's that too. How do I account for that? How do I plan for that? How do I take that in consideration? How could I have a successful transition that is, it's called succession planning for a reason, not succession. Hello, here, it's yours now, or I'm gone, or I'm not unhealthy, or somebody has some kind of health event that they can't do it, which occurred to one of my friends. He was in an accident. You talked about your friend having
Mhm.
somebody that passed away. My friend was in an accident the other day. He can't work the farm now. And so all his friends around there are helping him to do the farming, planting. He's got a dairy farm here in British Columbia. So these unaccounted for events. The other thing, the final kind of comment, I think, Elaine, is take action on this.
Yes.
You listen to a
does not cook
podcast. Oh, that
rice.
was fine. That was good. Elaine had all these things, and you don't do an assessment. You don't call a coach. We're putting in the download of the purpose book a little opportunity to have a 15-minute meeting with me or with you. I mean, obviously they know you and you have all your contact stuff. Is get the help that you need. You would never do this in any other part of your life. If there's something wrong with your animal, you get the vet out. Now, we do what we can, but you get the veterinarian. Why are you getting them out? Because they're an expert. They know what they're doing. You know what you're doing. We know what we're doing. Just get the help. Why did this company who has $50 million of business hire me to come in? Because they couldn't do it on themselves. It's not where you should feel sheepish or badly about it. This is sort of standard practice where you get somebody to assist and have this objective view. And so, if anybody has questions, I'm sure they can reach out to you, Elaine, or they out myself. We just want to help. And I have just a passion for and a love for the agriculture community. I still kind of go out to the farm and help a little bit here and there. And I like to be outdoors. So, I mean, it's a very important in my culture. You know that I have a 4-H background as well. So all of that linkage into it to help everybody.
And on that note, I just want to give a shout out to 4-H Canada, because back in the day in 2018, I was awarded most outstanding alumni, and you also got that award a
In
few years
2022.
later. In 2022, 4 years later. So we
thank
have
you.
had a lot of blessing and training and skill development for the years
Mhm.
between 9 and 19 that I spent in 4-H, and you as well, in your white shorts or your white pants and your white shirt, being a dairy judge.
The dairy guy. Yeah, that's right.
As a dairy guy. So, folks, this has been an intense conversation, but a good one. And again, side note of the buzzing phone and the buzzing saw going through the drywall for my farmhouse. But this is life. And so I could have decided yesterday to not call the plumber, but it was a good thing I did, because my wall is being cut apart as we speak, because it's an emergency and it has to be dealt with. But I think Ken and I are both very clear is that we don't want an incident like an accident, a health event, to make you take action. And so while you're listening to this, whether you're on the field or are feeding cows or taking a walk, just keep taking the next step and don't feel that you need to do it alone. Make the call, book online, download Ken's book that he's graciously given to you as a gift. Hit the red tab and get a 15-minute discovery call with him, or reach out to farmfamilycoach.com. And we are still happy to give you 15 to 20 minutes of our time to help you assess what you need next to take the next step. Thank you so much, Ken, and thank you for being a great encourager to me over the years and sharing stories.
You're welcome.
So
You've been
we'll see you next time,
too.
folks. We'll see you next time. And I know your mom's listening to this, because she's texting me back and saying, "Hey, Elaine, that was a good one." And she's passing it on. So thank you to the woman in BC who runs with me. I'm not running. She's running with my podcast in her ear. And thank you to the Milking family down in the U.S. who passes this through their entire team. Let us know how you found us when you call. And please, folks, remember, it's your farm, it's your family, and it's your choice. And we're here to help you find harmony through understanding. Bye for now. What's happening on your farm or in your farm advisor office? And what could I do to shift this? Because things are stuck and I'm not where I thought I'd be when I'm 45, 55, 65, or 75. What I'm talking to you about is our membership site called the Farm Family Transition Membership. We've been doing it now for 2.5 years. If you're looking for weekly coaching encouragement, the practical tools that our team, Farm Family Coach, is known for, and the opportunity to know that you're not alone. So please consider signing up for the membership today. Try it out. We've now opened the doors any time of year, because we know your lives have seasons and changes. Give it an experiment. Just try it out. Because our actual billable rate for one-to-one coaching, which we still do, is twice what you have to pay to be part of a membership where you get coaching 3 times a month. Why not now? Click the link.